Well, hello there, Joyce.
Hello, hello.
It's been very lovely to get you on this interview.
It is a pleasure
Had
to be here.
Had to work with your agent for your
Pulling
schedule.
all the stops. I mean, I'm getting compensated greatly, so raking in the money from this interview.
Yes, of course. Well, would you like to do a little introduction of yourself?
Yeah, I'm Joyce. I just graduated from Northeastern, but I'm going to BC in the fall. Thank you.
For what?
Master's in social work. So I want to do
Wow.
clinical stuff and hopefully eventually do like therapy and things like that. That's the goal. But I had an art minor, and then it's kind of been my like quote unquote side hustle hobby kind of thing, where it's just the thing I enjoy most. So
Yeah,
that's what I do. Yeah.
So, can you tell me please about like the type of art that you do?
Yeah, so I actually do a whole smorgasbord of art. I started off in high school doing more traditional work, so like like pencil, kind of what you think of with a quote unquote fine art areas, pencil painting, with acrylics, watercolor, stuff like that, pen and ink. And then in college, one of my co-ops, so the 6-month internship that we do at Northeastern, experiential learning. I worked at Dana-Farber in their art studio. So I basically just did a lot of art education in the clinical setting, but that not only had like the art side of stuff, but more of the crafts. So I got super into embroidery while I was there. And then I got into like knitting, everything like that. And I'm always trying to push myself to like explore a new medium. So I've been getting into colored pencil recently, more of like the ink wash kind of stuff, oils, and I'm always just trying to, I get really focused in on one subject, and then I get like, do it until I get bored, and then I move on to another thing. So all over the place, really.
How much does like one skill, like a skill set for one medium of art transfer to another one?
Transfer to another? I think that there's some basics that can transfer. So a lot of what's consistent along my work is going to be what I'm doing it of. So, I mean, the way that I approach art is mainly doing subjects that interest me the most, right? So I find myself doing like landscapes, and you've seen that like in the stuff I have in the Cubbies, all embroidery landscape kind of things. But then I'm really interested in like people, animals, places, right?
Okay.
So those kind of skills, whether I'm doing embroidery or a painting of that, right? Like if I'm looking at the colors and things, like that transfers really easily. But in terms of like the application itself, like embroidery, you have to learn a bunch of stitches, and I've been struggling with oils more because it just dries so slowly.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so acrylic can dry in like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Right? So like I'm always touching my pieces and like ripping stuff off and like just all over it, right? Very hands-on. Whereas oils, like it takes like days to dry. So even when I'm working on it, I'll just like accidentally touch something or rest my hand. So that learning curve has taken more time, and just figuring out that, because it's a whole, with acrylics and watercolor things, it's all water-based. So you're washing your brushes with water, and so whereas with oils, you have to get special like things to clean it in and everything like that. You have to have good ventilation because the thing you clean it in isn't good to breathe in. So it's a whole thing.
Something with music that I've started to like play around with and like really embrace is mistakes.
Yes.
And turning mistakes into the artwork itself. So do you find yourself doing that, especially with oil?
So yeah, a lot of why that connects to what I'm trying to do a lot, whereas when I'm going into a new medium or doing something else, it's often because I find myself in an artistic rut, and once I've figured out something that quote unquote works, where I'm like happy with the result of it, everything like that, I'll just do that same process over and over again, and I like find myself not wanting to experiment because I'd rather like in the moment I just want the product to be as good as it can be, right? But then a lot of what I try to push myself to do in an artistic sense is to make those mistakes and specifically have experiments where I'm just like, I know that it's not going to turn out well, or doing little more like sketches, we call them, oh my gosh, I'm not even gonna remember the word. But basically like doing, I have an example in here. These little tiny, oh my God, I'm not, someone's gonna be like screaming right now. But basically like these small examples of like a sketch that I want to do in the future.
Okay.
And so this is all stuff I've been doing with a class I'm taking, but thumbnails. We're back.
Thumbnails.
So yeah, this is all as you can see, I don't know if anyone noticed.
I don't know if anyone noticed, but our nails are done.
Thumbnails.
Thumbnails.
So yeah, this is all me trying to like loosen up and experiment more and like try with different compositions and push myself out of my comfort zone because yeah, I'm not going to grow as an artist unless I'm making these mistakes, right? And just being more comfortable with that. I mean, we talk a lot about process versus product. So I'm usually more focused on the product, but then that's like making it so I'm not enjoying myself in the, we were talking today where you're like, what were you thinking when you did this stroke? And I joked, this is terrible. And that's often what it is, where I'm looking at it and I'm like, here's how to fix it. Here's how to fix it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I'm very analytical and, yeah, very technical with my work a lot. And so that's why I want to be, taking more into creativity and integrating mistakes and just being there for the process rather than only focusing on the product.
Yeah, that's something that I find myself really trying to focus on with
Yeah.
theater or anything. For me, it's all about the process.
It is the best way to approach stuff. I think that that's like having worked with in art education with adults and kids, that's the biggest difference. Whereas like I'm way more on the quote unquote adult side where adults get super in their head and they only want a good product.
Yeah.
And if they don't come away with something that they're like feeling proud of, then they didn't have a good time. And so it honestly makes it a lot harder for adults to learn art because they just have this mental block, right? So they don't want to try anything new. They don't want to be bad at stuff anymore. Whereas kids are all about the process and they're just like getting in there and they're like, I like green. You know, like, whereas like adults would be like, I just don't, they'd be like, and they'd be like, it's terrible. And they'd want to. Yeah. So I think that like I find myself falling into that same trap, which is why, because I have this awareness and know the difference, I'm trying to rewire my thinking towards it.
Yeah. Because like you think about it in a very like structural societal way of like, oh, like you're a kid, you're an adult, but really like if you just don't think of it as like two separate things, because like there's really great things about being a naive little kid who's just like doing everything all at once and just having a blast, and like being an adult where you kind of like want to really have a great product and are really focused on like the minute details, but like finding that blend of like kidult as one might say, scholarly sources source adult. But yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah, I think even compartmentalizing it, like the thing I've been doing right now is taking this introspective portrait course with, I don't know if anyone follows Riso Chan on Instagram at Riso Chan, but yeah, she does a lot of, not sponsored.
Please go take your course.
Please. She does a lot of like very creative works, but when she was showing me, she basically did the sketchbook tour, and it's like there's a sketchbook specifically for playing around and her just like more focusing, like using the terminology on the process, right? Where she's just like, oh, I really like how this ended up turning out. And she can then integrate those things into when she's focusing on the product because she's a professional artist, right? So I think that that's something to keep in mind. Whereas like there are times when like the product does matter as a musician, right? Where the thing that you're producing, you want to be the best product it can be, and where you're no longer going to be focusing on being like, how can I make mistakes, right? There's a period though where you do want to be experimenting, because then your music is going to be stagnated and you're not going to be growing anymore. So yeah, I think compartmentalizing and having the space for both, especially as like all of us on the Cubby are like creatives who are also trying to, you know, monetize, be able to get something from this hobby. I think having that distinction in how we're working on it can create a healthier relationship with our art too. A very practical use. That notebook,
So, would you mind showing me what you're working on now in this class?
Thing. Yeah, so we've had 2 weeks so far, thus far. So the first thing we did was like thinking about like color schemes and like playing around with like, based on different ideas, like what comes to mind, right? So all about thinking not only about the technical aspects, but how we want to express ourselves in this quote unquote, the introspective aspect of it, right? So I did like night, and so a lot of dark blues purple that I decided to utilize was the one I did for night, right? So I did want to do the pink background, but the reference photo I'm working from has like a big shadow. So one of it's in really bright light, one of it's kind of dark. So I want to play specifically with the color scheme and doing kind of in the shadows, all the dark blues, purples, things like that. And then having the lights and working within like kind of a yellow orange scheme. So that'll have a lot of contrast. But this is just the thumbnail. So it's nothing. I spent maybe 10 minutes on it, and it's just me trying to like lay down the colors, see if I like how it looks, just in a general sense.
I would buy that 10-minute sketch.
You would buy this 10-minute sketch?
It would take me 10 months to make.
No, it would not. No, it would not. And then, so some other things we've been doing just in terms of like loosening up and like working on technical aspects. We did this exercise where we drew upside down. So this is actually the way that it was drawn. But then we flip. And so it's really an exercise on a lot of when you're doing drawing, you have there's symbols in your mind where you're like, an eye looks like this. It's almond shaped, and then it has this, right? So we've been taught specifically how to draw things, whereas when you're doing really realistic work and trying to make things like proportional, look representational, it's you want to kind of throw that out the window and just kind of go on what your eye's looking at.
Oh.
So this is a really helpful exercise for doing that, because when you're looking at something upside right, you're like, I know how an eye is supposed to look, and like that's super weird how it's like the crease is like this and XYZ. Whereas when it's upside down and you're trying to draw from it, right? Like it's more just being like, okay, how does this angle look? What is the specific angle for this? And it can help with that, just breaking out of that block.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So that's an exercise that we did. And then the last thing I'm currently working on, the more bigger project, this week we worked on like the technical aspects of portrait drawing. So value, just like line, the line something. My brain just broke a little bit. It's the line something. Anyway, just the quality of the line, right? So how you just lines. Don't know if you've heard of them before, but very technical terms. So this is just a color pencil portrait that I'm trying to flush out, but it's all a lot of like light theory. So looking at the shadows, you think when we're all taught how to draw a ball, the darkest part's supposed to be the part farthest away from the light, whereas actually in how shadows work, the darkest part's going to be right on that, like right at the edge, right? And so then it's going to fade out a little bit. So if you can see here, like the cheekbone is a little bit darker than like down here, and this is actually light because of how the reflections are working. The darkest part's on the nose, and that actually makes it pop a lot and make it look more realistic.
Contrast. Yeah. I saw a video of these guys showing how they make like animated 3D structures in movies, and they essentially just take a sphere, like a fushigi, and they take it where they're filming, and they take a picture of it from like different angles, and that's how they get like the shadows and stuff.
That's the only, it's the best way to get references. People always think they know. You just gotta go by the reference.
How would they
never know? How would they know? So that's what I'm working on, just doing something way more technical, and then hope it's up right now. Hopefully by the end of this course, I'll get like way more creative and working with other mediums and things like that, and way more out of my comfort zone, because I just do way more like traditionally representational stuff. Like been doing a lot of figure drawings and things, but this is just a random page. But you know, a lot more strictly like, here's my reference photo, I'm gonna paint that, right? Okay. So I'm really excited to be bringing in a lot more that's just out of myself.
So would you say that I guess not taking from reference photos and really trying to create something from thought push you out of your comfort zone?
Yeah, that's where the little thumbnails that I was showing before, where it's just working from color, like, because I do still really enjoy working from a reference and like having something to go off of, having a subject matter. So even if that's like if I'm somewhere and I'm seeing someone sitting there, I want to draw that, right? I like to capture something, but even within portraits, like I'd like to bring in more aspects outside of the representational. So if I was being super strict to like a photo, I might be like, oh, well, the skin tone is specifically right here. Whereas if I want to make it more colorful, I'd get outside of the box in that sense. I'd be like, okay, I see like a tinge of blue in the shadow, so I'm going to make that a lot more like extreme and be noticeable. Yeah.
So do you feel like you are outside of the box to be outside of the box, or just outside of the box kind of bringing that kid aspect of like, let me just try this?
I think it's more let me just try it, right? Like I do want to, I feel like what I've found is more of like the adult and like what people think about, like it's very traditional and what's been accepted, everything like that, which I really enjoy. And I'm not a very good at like abstract things in general, right? Like I still think I'll stay within this specific sphere, but like I would like to just throw myself out of that comfort zone and bring back in those kid aspects. Even if you look at like the Riso Chan artist too, a lot of what she does is like bring in these very childlike textures, and she'll just do these like very loose watercolor like paintings, put those into Procreate, and then do portraits on top of them. So she ties in a lot of really cool things within color theory, but then also just like aspects you wouldn't normally see in a portrait to show whatever kind of ideas that you're trying to, like whatever emotional state, something like that. Yeah.
Cool. So I guess just like as a final wrap up, what is something, or is there anything that you would have liked to let yourself know when you were starting art that you know now that you didn't know then?
I think that a big thing with most things that I'm trying to approach where I'm like, I really want to dedicate a lot of time to it, I want to like be able to figure it out, and keeping that drive going is just to focus on what you really enjoy right now, especially when you're starting out. So whether that's in a specific medium, right? If you really like pencil and you want to get more into art, I would say stick with pencil and like keep developing that until you're ready to, and you feel like you have that base and you're like, okay, now I want to try something else.
Okay.
Because I think that if you start with trying to learn everything at once, it can get really frustrating. Like there's a steep learning curve, right? And for me, what kept me going was just having a subject, right? So like I really like drawing people, and I like drawing things. I like doing representational stuff, so I've been focusing a lot on that. I got into figure drawing recently, and so I was like super excited about that. And that's why my pattern of like artwork I'm putting out is so random. It's because it's only what I'm focused on, interested on in that moment.
Yeah.
And I think that's huge in me continuing my like just practice and having it in my life. So yeah, that's something I would say. Just do things that you really enjoy. Just don't like that. That's it. I think that's just the easiest way to get, like, you're gonna put in more effort into things that you enjoy, and it's just gonna, because of that, it's gonna be more successful.
Yeah.
So that would be my advice. That's my usual.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure interviewing you, getting to know you and your art.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much.
And you can check out Joyce's stuff on the Cubby.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Yeah, I got a bunch of random stuff on there. So
yes. Well, thanks.
Thank you.